In spring of 2014, How They Play did a statistic. 1/3 of all baseball players have had Tommy John, have had TJ, the Tej, all these phrases and acronyms. But what are they? Tommy John is a surgery, but he was also a person. Why should you believe me? I got Tommy John. Now, what is Tommy John? Scientifically speaking, Tommy John is a tear of the ulnar collateral ligament, also known as the UCL, also known as the Tommy John. Now, throwing a baseball, there's called layback or external rotation. During external rotation, which is an unhealthy position for the arm to be in, you tear your UCL. Your UCL is the only thing holding together your upper arm and your lower arm when throwing a baseball. I had to reconstruct my UCL. Dr. Osbar, about 2 weeks ago from Orlando Health, made a 6-inch incision to me and cut me open to repair my UCL, to repair my Tommy John. Who was Tommy John? Well, when Tommy John was 20 years old, he was drafted to the Cleveland Indians, and he played for about 10 years. He was a left-handed pitcher. 10 years went by, and he was a pretty good pitcher, but he was a crafty lefty, which means that he didn't throw very hard. His fastball didn't blow anybody's doors off. But that changed. Now, one day when he was throwing, he threw a complete game shutout to win in 1973. Now, in that time period, he was a really good pitcher, but something happened to his arm. Now, looking back, he says that it just felt like soreness and he didn't think very much of it. Roger Cormier from Mental Floss wrote an entire article talking about Tommy John's entire experience. But by July 17th, this soreness in 1974, John had transformed into a top-notch pitcher. He was 13-3. But something happened when he threw, and there was a pop in that 1974 game. And here's him quoting, talking about it. Right at that point, this is Tommy John speaking, right at that point, I put force on the pitch. The point where my arm is back and bent, something happened. That's the layback that we talked about earlier. Tommy John told Sports Illustrated, it felt as if I had left my arm someplace else. It was as if my body continued to go forward and my left arm had just flown off into right field, independent of the rest of me. I heard the thudding sound in my elbow, and then I felt sharp pain. The pitch completely missed the strike zone. Amazingly, after rupturing the medial collateral ligament, which is different, in his left elbow, he tried to throw another pitch. It sunk and hit right at home plate. When Tommy's arm, Tommy John, did not heal after months of work, Dr. Job suggested a novel idea. Now, Dr. Job treated polio patients. He had done many surgeries, many ligament surgeries, many reconstructions, but never on a sports person, never on an elbow. So he took the same concept. He would take polio patients and he would reconstruct with separate tendons and ligaments to create another ligament in someone's ankle. But his idea was, now let's try to do this to Tommy John's elbow. Well, after a brief consult with this doctor, Tommy John said, well, if I can never play baseball again without it, so let's just do it. On September 25th, 1974, Job removed the tendon from John's right wrist and attached it to his left elbow. A second surgery was needed a few months later to move the ulnar nerve, which I also had done, but all in one fell swoop. And John's arm atrophied, and his pitching arm wrenched into a claw. After that, the rigorous rehabbing had begun, which I'm about to start. Still without feeling in two of his fingers, John taped the damaged digits to the fully functioning one so he could grip a baseball. He threw it against a wall until he got tired. That is old-time rehab. Later saying that he looked as polished as a little boy throwing a ball against the steps of his back porch. He also was told to squeeze blobs of silly putty in his hand. In June 1975, he was finally able to uncurl his paralyzed fingers. By late September, he was able to throw 3 innings in an exhibition game. John returned to the Dodgers starting lineup in 1976 and posted a 10-10 record. But it gets better. In 1977, he came all the way back from his recovery, and he did even better than he's ever done and posted 26 years in Major League Baseball. That's how many seasons he played. Now, to put in perspective, if you know who Nolan Ryan is, Nolan Ryan played 27. And Nolan Ryan didn't have a UCL injury until his very last outing. And Tommy John had one right in the middle of his season. So, The moral of the story is, Tommy John was the first person to ever have the reconstruction done on his elbow, and he was even a Cy Young candidate. So this guy who had an injury in the very middle of his season got a surgery that has never been done before called Tommy John. So he has two first names, Tommy and John. So he was the first person to ever have this reconstruction, and it was extremely successful, and it saved his career, and he became a better pitcher. So whenever this injury happens, it kind of sticks. Tommy John. Now, people in my life who have gotten Tommy John, just so you understand how prevalent it actually is. We'll talk about my brother, Christian Helsel. Now, it can happen in an instant, or it can happen from overuse, which is what happened to me. Well, my brother happened in an instant. He's an extremely healthy guy, and he's very, very buff. So people think, oh, the stronger you are, it will help your arm out. Well, that's not exactly true. So my brother was a freshman, and he played his entire freshman year at the University of Mississippi. He then went and played summer ball. Everything's totally fine. He's feeling great. He has no elbow soreness, no tightness, nothing at all. And then in one instant, on a backhand, he throws a ball from third base to first base and feels a pop in his elbow. He thinks in his head, oh man, I need to finish this inning, but I probably shouldn't throw another ball. The very next pitch, he gets the same exact pitch on his backhand, same exact ball hit, right on his backhand, and he has to throw it to first again, and the ball just goes flying to the right, and it feels, just like Tommy John said, as my brother describes as well, as his arm was just left behind him, and it just broke right off. Now that is Tommy John, which is a telltale sign. And we all know it, and we all can see it a mile away in the baseball world when someone tears their Tommy John. Other people in my life have been teammates like Tyler Osick here at University of Central Florida, Eric Mock and Connor Kleeman and Culver Hughes from Penn State. And then Western Florida, we have Kyle Argenbright and Jordan Menfee. And these are just a few names of the people in my life who have torn their UCL and have had a 100% recovery rate. Now, it's a common misconception that only pitchers get Tommy John. The statistic from how they play earlier, 1/3 of all major league pitchers have Tommy John. Well, another statistic says that 20% of all baseball players, when you're looking at a major league baseball game, 20% of the players on either team in total have had a Tommy John issue, which is crazy to think about. Now, people say, what can you do to prevent this from happening? There has to be a way to stop this epidemic of Tommy John. Well, we haven't found a way to stop it yet. But we have found ways to recover, obviously, through surgery. Now, there is something called prehab. Now, what is prehab? Well, it's just as it sounds. Pre-habilitation. So all the stuff that you do, pre-rehabilitation, right? So pre for before, rehabilitation to come back. So it's all the things that you do to prevent. They're all preventative exercises. Now, there's things inside your arm called decelerators. Decelerators are what slows your arm down. Now, there's a difference between throwing something and swinging your arm. For instance, javelin and baseball, Tommy John, UCL tears are very, very common. Well, then people say, well, what about pitchers? Because they associate pitching with tearing UCL. What about softball pitchers? This is a natural motion. Swinging your arm down at this angle is a natural motion. Throwing a baseball or a javelin is an unnatural motion. This puts pressure on your UCL, just so you can understand a little better. On a major league pitching staff, there's about 20 to 22 major league pitchers. Okay, but on a NCAA team, there's 12 to 14, even 20 on higher level teams. Okay, so 20 pitchers because you can't pitch every day. On a Division I softball team, there's between 3 and 4 pitchers because they can pitch over and over and over again. Okay, so that's kind of the difference, so you can understand. It's a very unnatural motion, and that's why people get hurt so much. But there's things that you can do, the prehab, to make sure that you don't actually get hurt, but it is not 100% going to prevent it from happening. For instance, there's a study that showed that the amount of pressure that your UCL can actually take. Now, your decelerators can help because your decelerators slow your arm down. That's why people who play tennis, even though it's the exact same motion, an overhead throw, they never let go of the racket. And that is where the pain and the injury happen. Your decelerators slow your arm down. There are little muscles, which I don't know the exact name of, but they are labeled as the decelerators. They slow your arm down. Whenever you throw a baseball and you let go of the pitch, that instant when you let go of the pitch is when your arm speeds up, and you can't slow it down other than your decelerators. That speed up is what causes the injury, because if your arm goes faster than your body is able to slow it down, then you will get injured. You will tear your UCL, and that is where the Tommy John comes in. Tennis players never let go of their racket, so they have a constant speed whenever they swing, and it's slowing down. They don't have to decelerate like a baseball player would. So they can just swing and swing and swing, and then they get tennis elbow, but the UCL is never affected, which is a ligament that tears. According to Mike Reynolds, to help younger players better understand elbow injuries, and that it's not okay to play through pain, which I tried. It doesn't work. Some warning signs may include decreased velocity, elbow tightness, and difficulty warming up. We also discuss a number of different ways youth baseball players can stay healthy, such as keeping a log of the number of innings you pitch. So there's really nothing you can do to completely prevent it. Studies have shown the amount of force that the UCL can withstand. So they will do studies on two separate pitchers. One pitcher who has not torn his UCL and won't tear his UCL for whatever reason, the study shows that he's putting enough stress on his arm to tear his UCL. And he throws with perfect mechanics or imperfect mechanics and never tears it. And then on the other side, we have a pitcher who's using improper mechanics and is putting a ton of pressure on his UCL and doesn't tear. And vice versa. You can be doing the exact what you're supposed to do or the exact opposite, and there is no real reason of why this person would tear the UCL and this person wouldn't. It is a baseball phenomenon, and there's really nothing you can do to prevent it from happening. But our technology and our surgeries have gotten so good that the comeback rate is 95% of Tommy John surgeries. The baseball players come back to 100% or even better, in my experience. So I tore my UCL on March 7th, 2019, while I was pitching against Auburn on a Sunday. My arm was hurting, and I said, you know what, we're playing Auburn, I'm going to pitch anyway. So I went out there and just pitched. And I threw and threw and threw and threw until my arm hurt so bad that I couldn't throw anymore. The next day, I couldn't even extend my arm. So what do? I went and got an MRI. Whenever you have a UCL tear, you go and get an MRI. It's called a multi-contrast MRI or an arthroscopy. So when they go in, they inject dye into your elbow, and then they create a multi-contrast between the dye and your ligaments, and they can see if the ligaments are torn. It showed that my ligaments were torn. To get a further explanation, we went to multiple doctors, and the multiple doctors look at it because everybody has a different opinion, and I even got an ultrasound. So I get multiple opinion, multiple sets of eyes, multiple doctors looking at my UCL, looking for tears, looking for anomalies, things that aren't exactly normal. Now, whenever they're looking at these, they have to make a decision. Is it worth doing the repair? Is it worth doing rehab? But here's what people don't understand. There is no blood supply to your UCL, so it cannot repair itself. All you can do is prevent it from getting any worse. So I made the decision for myself, for my career, and as did the doctors, that surgery would be the best option. So on March 7th, I had the surgery done, and they cut me open, and they did a complete reconstruction of my UCL. They took a tendon, which is called your palmaris longus, from my right forearm, and then looped it all through around my right elbow, and did a complete reconstruction, which is exactly what they did to Tommy John. So that's everything you need to know about Tommy John. There's complete reconstruction, who it was and how he was, and now the next time you hear Tommy John or TJ, you can have a better understanding of what it is.